So, The Mandalorian and Grogu is finally here, Star Wars' big return to the big screen after 7 years. And after such a long time with no Star Wars on the big screen, what better way to bring it back than to have the duo who essentially kept Star Wars alive for a limited amount of time on Disney Plus during the pandemic come to the big screen for the first time ever, that of course being Mando and Grogu themselves. So now that the movie is finally out, how exactly do these characters that most people know from a Disney Plus TV series translate to the big screen? In perhaps the most mind-numbingly empty feeling way possible. Unfortunately, perhaps to not that many people's surprise, The Mandalorian and Grogu is not the return to Star Wars on the big screen that most people were hoping for. What a complete shock. In a lot of ways, I'm honestly surprised this movie even exists, let alone it's being touted as the big return for Star Wars on the big screen to begin with. Especially since the last thing probably most people remember from theatrical Star Wars is the incredible disaster that's The Rise of Skywalker. Star Wars really needed something very different and going in a much different direction if it really wanted to secure itself on the big screen once again, and suffice to say, this movie really isn't that at all. This legitimately might be one of the most nothing experiences I've ever had watching a movie in theaters. There's a lot to go over for sure, so let's get into this movie, talk about why it doesn't work, and talk about why ultimately it feels like they had 3 scrapped episodes of the TV show that they just smashed together and called that a movie when making this. But first, are you, like me, very wary of how expensive gaming has gotten as a hobby now? I recently just spent over $200 pre-ordering the new Ninja Turtles game, the new Star Fox game that's finally coming out, which I'm very glad Star Fox is finally getting a big return, and also buying several other games for both my Switch and PS5. It seems now that gaming is the biggest and most lucrative entertainment industry in the world, eclipsing both the music and movie industries combined, it's also, of course, gotten a lot more expensive to properly indulge in over the years. If only there was one singular place where you could find all the best deals on your favorite games and also all the best deals on DLC and add-ons for those games as well. Well, look no further than Eneba, the sponsor of today's video. Eneba is the world's biggest gaming marketplace where you can find tons of different discounts for your favorite games on PC, PlayStation, Xbox, and Nintendo. You can also get great deals on DLC and in-game content for those games as well. I ended up being able to actually snag some great deals on Sonic Racing Cross Worlds DLC from this site, which is definitely a game I've been enjoying a lot in my off time. Eneba is a really reliable source for getting all kinds of great deals for your favorite games on multiple different platforms. If you ever need any assistance from Eneba as well, their 24-hour live support team is always there to have your back. Don't wait at all to get in on some of the greatest deals in gaming. Check out Eneba through the link in the description. If you're wanting to get some of the best deals in gaming, especially in today's economy, Eneba is certainly the way to go. Once again, check out Eneba through the link in the description. For a brief synopsis, The Mandalorian and Grogu is set not long after the events of the end of the 3rd season of the TV show. Mando has a new mission in this movie, that being to find a fully grown Rada the Hutt who supposedly has been kidnapped. As a lot of people might recall, Rada the Hutt was Jabba the Hutt's son from the original Star Wars The Clone Wars movie. Now he's a full-grown adult and has also been taking steroids, probably because now he's a giant buff gladiator who's beating up people. Together with Rada's help, Mando and Grogu must take down a pair of Hutt twins who are Jabba's successors as well, alongside Rada, and stop their evil plot to kill Rada and take over the Hutt Empire for themselves. On the surface, this is a pretty exceedingly simple premise, and it really is when you watch the film. I think the biggest problem, however, with this movie is that it's way too simple for its own good. I mentioned earlier how this film feels like it's 2 or 3 different episodes of The Mandalorian show that were repurposed into a movie, and with how events occur in this movie, and also how things are paced in general, you can really see that overall. As a bit of an example, the first hour of this movie is quite literally just Mando and Grogu going to get Rada the Hutt, freeing him from his gladiator captors, and then taking the person who had imprisoned Rada and turning him into the New Republic. That's obviously not a lot of plot movement, but that's the entire first hour of this movie. That honestly is not enough plot movement just to fill out the first hour of this film, and because of that, things feel super stretched and scenes feel like they're going on way longer than they really need to. I think if they'd cut a few things and also just put more of this in the first 45 minutes and also cut down the runtime of the film overall, this probably wouldn't feel as stretched. But even though this actually is on the shorter end of Star Wars films being only 2 hours and 12 minutes, it feels so long just because of how poorly paced it is. I honestly think I would have preferred if this movie had only been like an hour and 50 minutes, if anything. Interestingly enough, this actually is notable for being the first Star Wars film to feature Ellen Ripley herself, that being Sigourney Weaver, and even Martin Scorsese in this cast. That actually was something that really intrigued me about this film, hearing these two were going to be starring in it, since obviously Alien was making a new name for sci-fi right alongside Star Wars in the late 1970s, so it was kind of cool to see an actress from Alien finally appear in a Star Wars project. And Martin Scorsese was part of a group of directors alongside Steven Spielberg, Francis Ford Coppola, and George Lucas that really paved a new way for Hollywood in the 1970s as well, largely due to the collapse of the studio system, and as a result a lot more filmmakers had more freedom in the 1970s, which is something I've talked about in a previous video if you want to go check that out. So it was actually pretty cool to finally see two people who popped up around the same time as Star Wars finally featured in a Star Wars project. However, this also brings up another gripe I personally have with this movie, is the fact that I don't think anyone acting in this movie seems all that engaged in it either. I ended up watching this twice in theaters to figure out if I was just losing it or something, but no, it just seems like, at least in my opinion, everyone seems super bored in this movie. Despite the fact Sigourney Weaver is finally in a Star Wars project, she doesn't actually seem to be all that into it at all. Her line deliveries are honestly super flat, and she doesn't seem all that engaged with the film whatsoever. And even Martin Scorsese, of all people, sounds bored playing this alien monkey thing here. Even he just sounds like he's here to get his check from Disney and then call it a day. I guess he had to go back to work on his Apple TV Plus movie that he's doing with Leonardo DiCaprio. Real talk though, I actually am pretty excited for what happens at night. It looks pretty cool. But it is genuinely wild to me that they could get two legendary figures like this in a Star Wars movie and neither of them seem interested whatsoever. I will say, I did find it pretty funny seeing Spike Spiegel himself on the opening credits of a AAA Disney blockbuster. It definitely was cool to see Steve Blum getting some well-deserved recognition given how long he's been in the voice acting game for and how many popular characters he's played. But I think one thing that this film really made me realize that probably a lot of people have already realized at this point is just how intent Disney is on milking Grogu as a marketable character. Almost every single frame in this movie is focused on him doing something cute, eating something on screen, or making cute noises. And don't get me wrong, Grogu is cute, and personally I don't really have a huge problem with cute characters. But once again, with how drawn out this movie is, it becomes all the more apparent just how determined Disney is to drill it into their audience's head how cute Grogu is and how much you want to buy a plush of him after the movie. At a certain point, it does become rather exhausting. I think for me though, one of the biggest questions I really have is why exactly Disney thought this would be the way to return Star Wars to the big screen. I do know there actually was supposed to be a fourth season of The Mandalorian that started production in early 2023, but that ended up being scrapped in favor of this film. But given the fact there's already 3 whole seasons of a TV show where we see Mando and Grogu go on tons of different adventures to begin with, and the fact this movie just feels like another one of those adventures you would have seen in the TV show, and honestly one of the weaker ones too, I just can't exactly wrap my head around why Disney thought they should play up this movie, which again is basically just like 3 episodes of the TV show, as some big movie event for the show when it's really not that different from the actual TV series to begin with. Oftentimes when TV shows end up getting a movie, or especially if it's a fully theatrically released movie, you often do see them go the extra mile to make it feel like a real event and not just an extra edition of the TV show. I think some great examples of this are things like Codename Kids Next Door Operation Zero, which I have a lot of fond memories of from back in the day and honestly does really hold up still pretty well to this day as a genuinely good TV movie that really felt like a real event and a real pinnacle moment for the Codename Kids Next Door TV show overall. The stakes were genuinely high in that movie, way higher than they'd been throughout the entirety of the series. I think a lot of cartoonic movies in general actually did pretty good with this. I remember the Powerpuff Girls movie was pretty good for that, and also the Foster's Home for Imaginary Friends movie Destination Imagination. Even the original SpongeBob movie actually felt like a real event and something that definitely should have been the end of that series, even though unfortunately it obviously wasn't. And I can definitely think of a lot of other examples in regard to animated TV shows in general. Obviously, The Mandalorian is not an animated TV show, but honestly, I think all the animated TV movies I just brought up are way better and actually feel more like real events than The Mandalorian and Grogu. This literally just feels like another episode of the show. It does not feel like a real event for The Mandalorian Mandalorian, or honestly for Star Wars at all whatsoever. It honestly is one of the most nothing experiences I think I've had watching a movie in quite a long time. Obviously, I'd still say it's better than The Rise of Skywalker, but honestly, I have more to say about The Rise of Skywalker than this. Because at least with The Rise of Skywalker, it's genuinely interesting how terrible it is and what led up to it being so terrible, and how many truly mind-boggling mistakes that movie made on multiple fronts that ended up pissing off multiple ends of the fandom. But with this, there's almost nothing to say whatsoever, which is exactly why this review is pretty short all things considered. It really just goes to show how soulless Disney has become with Star Wars projects in recent memory. Now, that's not to say there aren't good Star Wars projects out there currently. In fact, the entirety of the Darth Maul show that's on Disney Plus right now, I binged when that came out, and I thought that was actually very good. In general, I do feel like animated Star Wars tends to have better storytelling than live-action Star Wars in today's day and age. And obviously Star Wars Visions Season 3 was really good as well. But this is just so empty feeling. There's just nothing here. It's just fluff and hoping to sell more Grogu merch. I just cannot stand it. I can't stand seeing these kinds of Star Wars projects in the modern age. And I know they can do better because they are doing better with their animated stuff. Now, I will say, I am actually pretty excited for Star Wars Starfighter coming out next year. Now, that sounds like a very interesting project with Sean Levy directing and Ryan Gosling in the lead role. I'm actually genuinely interested to see what happens with that project, especially since it's the first project that's set after the Skywalker saga now, since apparently it's going to be set after Rise of Skywalker. So it'll be interesting to see not only the timeline change, but also Sean Levy's unique directing brought into the Star Wars universe. I feel like I'm one of the few people who actually unironically enjoy Deadpool and Wolverine, and also I like Real Steel a lot. That's an underrated classic, so I'm looking forward to seeing what he does with Star Wars. And of course, if you saw Mandalorian and Grogu and liked it, that's great, and ultimately, as long as it makes you happy, that's really what matters. But for me, I just really couldn't get into this one. I am pretty excited for Star Wars Starfighter though, so I'll be waiting I guess a year for that to come out. For other movies coming up soon, I'm morbidly curious about the Masters of the Universe movie, which looks like it could either be good and fun or just terrible and fun. So I guess we'll see how that goes, although it's unfortunate that once again Jared Leto is in a movie. This man was exposed to be in the Epstein files, yet he still keeps getting roles. Unbelievable. Obviously, I'm looking forward to Supergirl as well, and I can't wait for that next month. And I'll probably check out Toy Story 5 just out of morbid curiosity as well. And of course, there are plenty other movies coming out over the course of the year as well that I'm actually looking forward to. So I'm sure I'll see y'all when I review those as well. But what do you think? Am I wrong? Am I a gay woke furry? Let me know in the comments below. Regardless, I hope you enjoyed this video or learned something new from it. If you like this video, be sure to give it a like and also consider subscribing as well. I do lots of videos like this, often talking about film, animation, gaming, and things like that in general. My next video will be about the concerning trend of fans diagnosing their favorite celebrities with autism, since personally I think that's something that kind of harms autism discussions overall. I'll also probably be talking about Masters of the Universe when that comes out sometime around next week, and I'm sure plenty of other subjects as well. Special thanks to my patrons and YouTube members who keep me doing what I do here. I appreciate y'all a ton. I appreciate all of you for coming to the end of this video. I hope you enjoyed it or learned something new from it. But for now, I've been Otterly Noah, and I'll see you on the Otter side. Bye!